Meeting will come to order. We are now holding our continuation of the special call meeting held Monday, September 14th, 2009, 9 a.m. At this time, I'd like to I'll give the invocation, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be followed up by Commissioner Bob Solari. Please rise. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come here and conduct the public's business. Please give us guidance, wisdom, and civility. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, at this time, I'll turn it over for a brief introduction to the County Attorney. Ms. Felt, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. This meeting is a continuation of the meeting that was held on Thursday, September 10th. At the end of that September 10th meeting, the insulated period was reimposed. It is now lifted for this meeting. Today, we are going to ask that you take Article 17, wages, off the table and fairly consider the positions of both parties, and as set forth in Florida Statute Section 447.4034D, you shall take such action as you deem to be in the public interest, including the interest of the public employees involved, to resolve this disputed impasse issue between the Indian River County Sheriff's Office and the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association. The agenda before you contains the procedures that you voted on at the last meeting. You amended them there, and the procedures before you reflect the amendments.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Commissioners, probably the best thing to do is to have a motion to take from the table the item that we had tabled at the last meeting. So, got a motion to take from the table from Commissioner Wheeler, second by Commissioner Flesher. The motion to take from the table is not debatable or amendable, so we'll go straight to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are right in where we left off, Commissioners, and so we'll start right over here with the brief voting statement, or briefly where you were. I believe we left off wondering where the money was going to be there.
Chairman Davis, Commissioner Flesher, Commissioner Wheeler, Commissioner Solari, Commissioner O'Brien, thank you again for having us here. Not that you really had any choice. We had to be here. But that being said, in following up from where we were last week, the bottom line in terms of the figure that we had discussed and that we didn't have last week is that we are contemplating a payment of a one-time stimulus or lump sum payment in the amount of $1,582.86. That's a gross payment. The reason the figure is that particular figure is that would essentially net the employee $1,000 or $1,000 and change, as it were, after contributions which were under an obligation to make for taxes and FRS. I've provided that figure to Mr. Vallis for the union, and I would certainly defer to him, but I believe that in that regard that we have an agreement.
Okay. Does that need to be a part of the language of the contract, or can we do this with a memorandum of understanding between the sheriff and the union?
Well, from a practical standpoint, whatever happens here in terms of what happened last week and any vote that you make will be memorialized into a document which will be ultimately signed off on by both the union representatives and the sheriff's office, and ultimately referred for the board. In other words, we're taking the language that you give us as the quasi-judicial body and memorializing that, signing off on it, and that becoming the effective language for the contract.
Just, I guess, if we could accomplish this without actually adding language to a contract that's fixing to expire here in 2009 or 2010, I mean, I would rather do it with an MOU than to actually start putting language in a contract for y'all to come back and argue over perhaps at a different date, or even to go from that point forth next year. I mean, it's going to expire. It's a one-time bonus. Let it happen.
Well, I think the reality of it, Chairman, is that whatever title we put on the piece of paper, it becomes part and parcel of the collective bargaining agreement and is binding on the parties. Understood that on October 1st it's going to be moved because the payment's going to be made and we're going to be moving forward with whatever other actions or discussions that we need to have on the collective bargaining agreement thereafter, as is dictated by the collective bargaining agreement. I mean, I understand your concern. It's really going to be a document. It's going to be attached to the collective bargaining agreement, and that document is going to reflect the decisions that you made on the 3 articles that we discussed, and that's going to be binding on the parties.
Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Harping?
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, this payment and the amount that you're looking at, Mr. Harping, who's included in that annual year-end bonus?
Well, in terms of the overall application, is certainly the collective bargaining unit members would be contemplated in that as a matter of law, and we're also contemplating that for all full-time sworn and non-sworn employees, as well as a reduced payment similar to last year for paid part-time employees as well.
So all employees that are full-time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Would that be with the exception of the exempt status employees?
That's my understanding.
Approximately how many employees would that account for?
The total number, just under 500, I believe. I don't have the exact figure, but in the upper 400s.
Regarding the exempt status, I mean, would the sheriff himself be eligible?
No.
Okay.
No.
And his command staff?
No.
Okay. And that's what I was referring to as far as the exempt status.
Well, we have certain people that are identified as exempt under the law for purposes of Fair Labor Standards Act, and those people, it's my understanding, would not be part of the receipt of those payments.
Thank you.
Commissioner Solari?
Based on whatever analysis you did, is the full amount that's going to be payable to all the sheriff's employees available in the 2008-2009 sheriff's budget?
2008-2009 fiscal year budget?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Brien?
Just 2 things. One, what's the total dollar amount we're looking at here?
In regards to the bargaining unit members or
No,
cumulatively?
the 400 plus cumulative.
Approximately $747,000.
Okay. And then on April 14th, we approved a budget amendment for the sheriff for some capital equipment of about $815,000 and change. Is there money remaining in the budget for those capital purchases?
I have to defer to the controller. Yes, he's indicating yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Mr. Vallis, welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
excuse me, out of an abundance of caution, if any member of the public wishes to speak, we should
That
swear
just hit
them
me,
in,
too.
yes.
Anybody that wishes to speak that's not an attorney, you need to be sworn in. Please rise. Just raise your right hand.
I'll raise mine.
And
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
thank you. Sorry about that. That's formality.
Mr. Harpling in too.
I understand. Am I correct that attorneys don't?
That is correct. Attorneys as officers of the court do not get sworn in.
Yeah. I didn't make that up. Or I'd have
Mostly
them stand up. So.
It's mostly attorneys that make the laws. That's
Yeah. Yeah. And Harry, just in case he gets asked a question on the aside, he just swore to tell the truth. Thank you for telling the truth there, Harry. Yes, sir. Mr. Vallis, welcome.
Thank you. We're obviously not happy with where things wound up Friday relative to the empowerment or verification of empowerment of the sheriff relative to the shift changes. I know that's water over the dam, but I think the facts reflected that that shift change cannot occur with the manning that was outlined. As far as the economic settlement is concerned for the existing fiscal year, I personally, and this is subject to the members voting on it, it's a paradox on this because they can vote on it, and if they turn it down, it's still implemented. But that's the nature of the beast when you get an impasse on certain issues. As far as I'm concerned, it is acceptable to us. The only question that I had coming in and talked to the sheriff's controller was if these wages were subject to FRS deductions, since they're not part of base pay, and he assured me that they were, and that when this happened in the past, there were FRS deductions made. We would like to confirm that, but otherwise, that part is acceptable to us. What I did speak to Mr. Harpring about, though, relative to the wage article, and because of the I guess, confusion or varying opinions, that it's crystal clear that this only addresses the current fiscal year, and that the parties shall continue to negotiate any wage considerations for the fiscal year commencing 10/1/09. And given that this will be sort of substituting for language that's in the contract now, I just wanted to go on record again that that kind of direction is forthcoming from your board. Other than that, I have nothing more to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Vallis, Commissioners? Seeing none. Okay, at this time, any discussion between us?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question for Jason. When the firefighters or the Teamsters get their top-out pay, is that taxed or is that a net?
It is taxed. It's not, as I understand, credited for FRS service, but the taxes are withheld. Federal income taxes, Social Security, things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that needs to be clear because the question was asked about Florida retirement. And by this gentleman, I think you want that clear on the record because there is two schools of thought. Is it included in their FRS compensation or not? And that's a determination. I think most bonuses do not have to be included in their FRS compensation.
Is it safe to say that if it is, that gets deducted?
They need to answer it, not you, because it's the sheriff's office who's going to handle it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim. I didn't mean to.
Good morning, Commissioners. Harry Hall, Comptroller, Sheriff's Office. Last year, we looked at this and asked the FRS, since we were contemplating this to be not a bonus, but a payment for future incentive. In that case, they looked at it and told me that it would be required for FRS payment. Now, if we determine that this is a lump sum bonus, then yes, my understanding that it would be exempt from the payment of the FRS.
Well, personally, I don't care which way it goes. I don't have a dog in that hunt as long as it doesn't exceed the figure that we have there. I mean, I don't want to pay it and then all of a sudden come back and say, oh, by the way, now you owe an extra chunk of change to FRS. So we need to, I guess, decide that today, whether this is going to be.
Well, I think this gentleman brought it up. That's why we want clarity.
I agree with him. I mean, I think that. And do y'all have y'all don't have a preference, do you?
I don't. No, actually, it's cheaper.
You have a preference?
We did.
My preference is, if it can be avoided, that it not be included.
Okay. Because
it will increase the net amount of money from the $1,500 and change that you've approved. And I wasn't party to this last time, and I know it's kind of somewhat of a toss-up in terms of how it's interpreted, but I don't see how a lump sum that doesn't go to base can be considered a payment for future services. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Anybody else? Commissioners, any questions before we move on to the public comment? Yes, sir. No? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Yes, sir.
I just had a question. One of the exact dollar amount again on the disbursement for each employee?
For each employee. What we did is we tried to gross it up so that the employee would get a net check of $1,000. Now, we were contemplating having to pay the FRS contribution, which would mean it'd be a different amount for each employee, whether they're regular or special risk classification. So based on that, we were using a figure of $1,582.86 for a special risk employee. For a regular risk, which is normally a civilian or a non-law enforcement, that cost would be $1,446.58. Now, if I understand it right, the union rep is saying that if we're contemplating $1,582 as the cost to gross up for a $1,000 check and we don't have to pay the FRS, can that be included in the amount that we figured for their remittance?
And I'm assuming that y'all don't have a problem with that, I heard you say earlier.
No, absolutely not. What we did is we went with the worst case scenario. Could we do this? And sure. If we could, what would be left over? And we have a range where we figure after we pay all of our bills, And now I'm projecting ahead because I really won't know the total dollar amount until the third week of October. But we look like we have between $160 and $360,000 left over.
Okay.
Now that was contemplated on having, we figured 493 employees on board, full-time, part-time, including executive staff. That was figured in this calculation.
I understand these are your good faith best estimates.
Yes,
And,
sir.
I mean, if we have less employees, it's not going to be, I'm clear on that. Go ahead.
Was this the dollar amount that was intended in July that was expressed during the negotiations? Or has it been adjusted since then?
I'm not clear on exactly what you're asking, Commissioner.
Are you referring, I'm not sure what you're...
Is this dollar amount, the intended dollar amount that was expressed during the negotiations, or did you have...
We didn't have a dollar amount at that time.
We didn't have a dollar amount?
No, sir.
Okay. And we do have the funds.
Question?
Yeah, yes, Commissioner Wheeler.
Yeah, when we talk about the FRS, in my way of thinking, there's two approaches to this. There's one that would be an across-the-board bonus, which is apparently where you're at right now, with 493 employees all getting the same amount. I wouldn't think that if it's done that way, that FRS would get a portion. But I also would say that that's one option. The other is a salary extension rather than a bonus, which would, in my opinion, be based on a prorated amount based on what your salary or annual income is. In other words, if you were doing a percentage of their salary for a bonus, that would be a salary bonus in my mind anyway, that you'd pay FRS for. If somebody's making $50,000 and got 10% versus somebody making, or whatever the percentage would be, somebody making $30,000. It should be based on salary and income. And then I would, from my thinking, would be FRS, because it'd be kind of like a portion of their salary, a percentage increase, where across-the-board bonus would just be across-the-board bonus and wouldn't necessarily have to go to FRS, which would give more spending or disposable income to the individuals getting the bonus.
I appreciate your input there, but I don't think that it's up to us to make that decision.
It's not. I'm asking the question.
Oh, okay. Does anybody know the answer? I think really what we ought to do in this instance is before checks are cut, we get a letter from somebody at FRS and saying, hey, is this do we need to make FRS contributions on this or not, or whomever the authority is, because it clearly isn't us and it's clearly not y'all.
Well, based on what Harry said, it's based on the definition of what the bonus is or salary is or whatever.
And I'd just like to confirm that before checks are cut.
Right.
It was done in the previous year.
Previous year it was done as a
One-time stimulus?
future performance, a stimulus. But they looked at it like it was an incentive package rather than a lump sum bonus for previous performance.
See, where I'm coming from and looking at that too, you may have a civilian personnel making bottom scale, and you may have a deputy making upper scale. And of course the job descriptions and everything else are different. That's why the salaries are different. And I don't know, I'm not sure that it seems a little inequitable to give everybody the same bonus. I don't have a problem either way, but I mean, it's just a thought.
And since we're throwing out thoughts here, I don't mean to open up a can of worms on this, but what would be, if somebody were in their last 5 years, and this may help them with their high five, would it be beneficial to them to be able to choose whether they wanted it as a, I mean, I don't know whether that's even possible.
Well, just a thought on that too. I think if I were in their shoes, I'd rather have the disposable income right now rather than getting a percentage back over a long period of time with a retirement system.
All right. It was just an idea. All right. Any other comments? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to
Yes, sir. Commissioner Fletcher.
authorize the sheriff to express his wishes on the stimulus package, whatever we want to call it, to disperse that post haste, how he sees fits.
Okay. So, in effect, you're siding with the sheriff. That's what I mean. I'll second that.
Under discussion?
Yes. And
I would request an amendment to to the motion to not include payment to the FRS?
Fine with that. That was.
I'm not until we know for sure whether or not it's exempt.
Well, I don't think you can answer back from the state before the end of the month. They are government, you know.
I believe we have about 2 weeks to go.
If I may,
Yes.
What I would request for purposes of clarity is that the board define that amount would be the $1,582.86, and that we would exercise our discretion in articulating that payment as a lump sum payment and not a payment for future services, thereby excluding it from the FRS requirement for contribution. My concern is clarity in your decision in terms of the language, as we'll be drafting something that has to accurately reflect what you do, so as specific and as detailed as your vote can be on the language, that would be our request. And again, our request would be for those amounts under those circumstances.
Well, and y'all are going to be drafting this, correct? I mean, y'all are going to get.
I will.
Okay, and run it past
Well, of course.
the other side.
Yeah.
But the long, I believe that the motion is clear and the intent is here to do what the sheriff said, what we'd like to do with the money.
Mr. Chairman,
And the dollar amount is $1,582.86.
Yeah, that's only for sworn. I mean,
That's correct.
You wanna go into that?
At this, if at your discretion, you're the board. If your discretion, you want to authorize the sheriff for everybody. I mean, obviously, your decision is binding contractually in terms of the bargaining unit. Certainly, if you want to exercise your authority and your discretion to, at this time, authorize that for everyone, including the $600 and something payment, gross payment for part-time employees as well. Whatever the board wants to do, that's fine. I just want to make sure that whatever language you decide on is specific as to the amount, because that will be specifically applied as to the bargaining unit members and to others across the board as well, as I indicated initially.
Well, I mean, we know what the sworn, the not sworn, but we don't know the part-time. I mean, you're asking us to make a motion on stuff that I'm not sure we know.
No, I indicated earlier that the part-time, the gross amount would be $690.75 gross. If I didn't do that earlier, then I neglected to do that, and
Well,
I
maybe you did, and I
apologize.
just didn't write it down.
But again, your decisions are going to be legally binding as to the bargaining unit members, because we're here for you to resolve the impasse as to wages. And the amount that we've specifically indicated, the $1,582.86 gross lump sum payment, would be what specifically would be in the language of the document that memorializes your decision.
Commissioner, would you be willing to amend your motion to say that? Okay.
Absolutely.
We've got a motion and a second on the floor that stipulates.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Would you like to see if there's any union rebuttal and obtain public input before you actually vote?
Well, we just had the union.
Yes.
Anything else you need to add, Mr. Vallis? And then I opened it up to the public, and nobody stood up, but thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
As a point of clarification, the $1,582 is inclusive
And 86 cents.
And 86 cents. That is inclusive of benefits, correct?
That's gross.
Okay.
That's what you mean by gross?
Including Social Security, Medicare payments.
That's
things like
gross.
that. Okay.
Okay.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. And really, that protects us in the event somebody disagrees with us on the FRS. That's still gross. Okay. And then, so just to clarify, we've got the three levels: the $1,582 and $1,582.86, the $1,446.88, 58 cents.
When
And
did
then
that come in, the 1,400?
that's for the non-sworn.
Yeah,
okay,
Mr. Chairman,
okay.
point of clarification, I thought this motion was for the bargaining unit members.
Oh, that's right. Well, it is.
We're only interested in the one number, the 1582.86.
Touche.
I mean, that brings up a legal question.
Okay.
I know we're dealing with a contract here, and Mr. Solari is probably correct in his assumption, but have we got the ability, we can only deal with the union members, we can't say the entire department, is that legal understanding?
Well,
Yes.
We're here to do the impasse.
Yes, Commissioner, this is an impasse hearing, so it's the bargaining employees that are subject to it, It's my understanding from the presentation that custom and practice has been to extend a payment, however characterized, to non-union employees, but your agreement, the agreement between the two parties, will only be with respect to the bargaining unit employees.
So the others would be, we don't have the ability to deal with the other non-union employees. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Not at this hearing.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I don't even think even after this hearing we don't.
Well, no, we don't. If we don't at this hearing, we don't.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just think the sheriff understands, I think it's our intent that
Yeah.
this should apply to all.
I agree.
I
all
think
it was
members
his
of
suggestion.
the.
I think it was his idea before it was ours.
Right, okay.
So, okay. All right, then in that case, we really need to go back to the motion then, which is only that it's the $1,582.86.
Yes. Just add one, I think it's an important factor to consider. If the board is looking at crafting language where it's not just we accept administration's language or we accept the union's language and we're crafting something that then puts a dollar figure in, I think we need to be careful on what could be considered the status quo going into next fiscal year.
Yeah.
So if it's the board's pleasure to craft language that spells out an exact number, then I think you need some language in there that also says that future raises or lump sum payments for future years will be subject to collective bargaining agreement or to future collective bargaining.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So it doesn't set a status quo going forward. You're just negotiating this year.
Clearly.
Any future raises are subject to collective bargaining and then therefore avoid the status quo.
And that's one of the reasons why, respectfully, I'll be drafting up the language to make it narrow and tailored to your decision here today as it relates to this particular fiscal year. And we appreciate that. This would obviously not impact or bind this particular dollar amount and your particular action under the collective bargaining agreement, but for your actions here today in that distribution.
Okay. That's my intent. Anybody? Any other questions, comments before the vote?
The only thing I'd like is a repeat of the motion.
The repeat of the motion is that we grant the $1,582.86 to the union.
How about the
bargaining unit?
FSA?
That's gross. So regardless how that turns out, it's gross, not net. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that if it's legal for FRS not to be taken from this amount, that it in fact be given the gross amount with the other deductions minus FRS.
Commissioner, if that's the case, it's still called gross.
Well, I know that. I'm just stating that I would like to see if it's legal not to include the Florida retirement system.
So I think what you're saying is you want the sheriff to classify this as a bonus and not payment for future.
Correct. And basically, if it's legal, I think that, I know if I was an employee getting a bonus right now, particularly in these economic times, I'd rather have the money in my account now than in the retirement system.
I was under the impression that's what we approved.
Well, I asked
in my motion.
Well, I think what you just said, you simply approved the $1,582.85. I didn't hear FRS.
Gross.
Gross pay.
Yes.
Correct.
And during the previous discussion, Commissioner, what we articulated is that we would call it the lump sum as opposed to a payment for future services,
Right.
Thereby excluding it from the requirements of FRS for deduction in that regard. But I think you have the authority, that's a separate issue. You have the authority to authorize the gross payment and the distribution, whatever deductions taken from the distribution are a matter of law as opposed to discretion.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it's legal not to take FRS out, I'd like to make a motion to do
And I'm
that.
definitely going to look into that and verify exactly what is required, sir.
We're
Harry,
money,
no,
it's a
listen,
separate motion.
Commissioner, no, it's not. And I mean, if you get a second on that, I'm good. But this being gross doesn't matter what FRS does or doesn't do. If that is the gross amount, if you got to deduct FRS, it'll be less. If we say we can't, it won't be. You'll just have Social Security, all the other deductions that you got to have in it. It is the gross amount. It's going to not to exceed that, regardless of what FRS does.
Well, maybe I'm mistaken, but as we sit here and discuss this, I think it's a two-edged sword. You can take FRS out or you can leave FRS in, depending on how it's interpreted. That's all I'm saying.
That's correct.
And I'd like it clear that if it's legal, I would like FRS not taken out of the bonus.
And that's what gross means in this instance, in my opinion.
Well, gross,
Make your motion. Go ahead and make your motion, Commissioner. What is it?
I made it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it just for clarification, get it off the board. It's just.
Okay. I don't follow what you're talking about, but we do have a motion on the floor to restate it one more time, Commissioner.
My motion was to, if it is legal, not to deduct FRS contributions from this amount. Social Security, other things would be deducted. And you're right, gross is gross, but there's a net after the deductions. And that's one of the deductions I would like to see not taken from the gross, which would make the net different.
Okay. Got a motion on the floor in a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Nay. How did you vote on that?
I
With the motion?
support it.
Okay. We got that it passed 3-2 with Commissioner Solari and Commissioner Davis dissenting. Okay. And y'all going to go write it and bring it back to us. All right. Is there any further discussion or any business to be properly presented at this time? Seeing none, I now declare this meeting adjourned.